driving, the sky became clear, birds flew above the highway. For the first time in years, Daniel was not thinking about work, that he was thinking about home, and somehow, that felt better. Far away, Daniel's mother Margaret sat alone at her kitchen table. A small birthday cake rested nearby, only one candle. She smiled sadly while looking at old family photos. Daniel was such a naughty child, she whispered. A neighbor visited. Any birthday plans? Margaret smiled. My son called. That's nice. Yes. Very nice. But deep inside, she wished he would visit. The neighbor accidentally sat on the birthday cake. Margaret gasped, oh dear. The neighbor stood up slowly, frosting covered his pants. They both burst into laughter. Margaret laughed so hard tears rolled down her cheeks. For a moment, she forgot her loneliness. Back on the highway, Daniel missed a turn. His GPS suddenly said, recalculating. Then, recalculating. Again, recalculating. Daniel sighed. You sound disappointed in me. The GPS remained silent. That silence hurts. Daniel accidentally entered a tiny town holding a chicken festival. People wore chicken costumes. One man danced while flapping fake wings. Daniel stared. What is happening? A woman proudly answered, annual chicken celebration. Daniel nodded slowly, of course. A giant mascot chicken approached him. Would you like chicken soup? Daniel looked horrified. That feels disrespectful. Before Daniel could leave, people dragged him into a contest. Best chicken dance wins $50. I don't dance. 5 minutes later Daniel was flapping wildly in public. Children laughed loudly. An old woman shouted, shake your wings harder. Daniel somehow won second place. He received free eggs. What am I supposed to do with these? Celebrate, someone shouted. As Daniel drove away holding free eggs, he suddenly laughed. He had spent years living seriously, working, rushing, worrying, but today he danced like a chicken with strangers, and strangely, he felt happy. Suddenly traffic stopped. A police officer explained, the bridge ahead is closed. Daniel groaned, detour? 20 extra miles. Daniel looked frustrated, then he remembered Emily. A little girl who would never see her mother again. Daniel took a deep breath. 20 extra miles no longer felt important. On the detour road Daniel saw an old man standing with a broken bicycle. Daniel stopped, need help? The old man smiled. You trust strangers? Not usually. Good. Because I snore. Daniel laughed. He placed the bicycle in his trunk. The old man talked non-stop during the ride, mostly about potatoes. Daniel learned far more about potatoes than he ever wanted. Before leaving, the old man said, you know what potatoes and family have in common? Daniel blinked, what? If you ignore them too long, things smell bad. Daniel burst into laughter. That might be the weirdest wisdom I've ever heard. But true. Daniel nodded slowly, yes. True. At home, Margaret looked out the window repeatedly. Every passing car made her hopeful, then disappointed. She finally sighed. He's busy, she whispered. Still, she left the porch light on, just in case. Daniel remembered all the times his mother invited him. Come for dinner. Stay for the weekend. Visit when you can. And every time he answered, maybe next month. Now those words sounded painful. He realized love should never be postponed. Daniel stopped at a bakery. He wanted to buy his mother a cake. The baker asked, what message should I write? Daniel smiled, how about? I'm sorry I took so long. The baker looked emotional, then accidentally dropped icing on Daniel's shirt. Oops. Daniel laughed, it's okay. This journey already includes chicken dancing. Why not cake stains too? Daniel tried calling his mother again. His phone died. Perfect. He searched everywhere for a charger. Instead he found 3 pens. 2 socks. A French fry, and 1 mysterious spoon. Daniel stared at the spoon. I don't even remember owning this. The sun slowly began setting. Golden light covered the road. Daniel felt peaceful. He rolled down the windows. Cool air entered the car. He smiled quietly. For years he thought success meant working non-stop. now he realized success also meant having people to love. Daniel's hands shook. For the first time, he imagined losing his mother. The thought terrified him that he suddenly understood Emily's pain, and he realized how lucky he still was. As Daniel neared his mother's town, he saw ambulances ahead. His heart raced. What happened? A man nearby said, "Small fire in an apartment building." Daniel felt panic. His mother lived nearby. He drove faster. Finally Daniel reached his mother's street. Her house stood safe and quiet. The porch light glowed warmly. Daniel almost cried with relief. He parked quickly, then paused. He suddenly felt nervous, like a little boy again. Daniel walked to the door carrying flowers and cake. He knocked softly. Footsteps approached. The door opened. Margaret stared at him in shock. "Daniel?" Daniel smiled nervously. "Happy birthday, Mom." For a moment she said nothing, then tears filled her eyes. Margaret hugged him tightly, very tightly. Daniel hugged her back, and suddenly he realized how long it had been since he hugged his mother properly. Too long, way too long. "You drove all the way here?" Margaret asked. "Yes." "Why?" Daniel looked at her carefully. "Because flowers are not enough anymore." Margaret smiled through tears. "Oh, Daniel." The house smelled like cinnamon and old books. Everything looked exactly the same. Family photos covered the walls. Daniel noticed a photo of himself as a child wearing underwear on his head. "Mom." Margaret laughed loudly. "You thought you were a superhero. I told you to burn that picture." "Never." Margaret prepared dinner excitedly. She cooked far too much food.